In a city where money bought silence, one waitress's words cost her everything and changed everything. The crystal chandeliers of Le Chateau, elegant cast, prismatic shadows across tables draped in imported Italian linen. It was Tuesday evening, which meant the restaurant was packed with the city's elite, CEOs closing deals over wine that cost more than most people's monthly rent, socialites comparing vacation homes in the Maldives, and politicians pretending not to know each other. And then there was Margret Joe. Welcome to Kindness Arena. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unseen connections that change lives, please help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter and deserve to be heard by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, comment your thoughts, where you are watching from, and share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated. Your support keeps these powerful, true stories alive. She swept through the entrance like a storm system, her Hermes bag swinging from her wrist like a weapon, her heels clicking a staccato rhythm of entitlement across the marble floor. The hostess, a young woman named Marie who'd worked there for 3 years, visibly paled. Mrs. Joe, Marie stammered, already reaching for the reservation book, though she knew Margret Joe never made reservations. We weren't expecting. I don't inform establishments of my arrival, Margret snapped, her voice sharp enough to slice through the ambient classical music. I grace them with my presence. Now, where's my table? The restaurant fell into that peculiar hush that always accompanied Margret Joe's entrances. Conversations didn't stop exactly. That would be too obvious, but they dimmed, became cautious. Everyone knew the stories. There was the boutique owner who'd suggested a dress might be too small for Margret's frame. The boutique closed within a month, crushed by suddenly withdrawn investments from 3 major backers, all friends of Margret's son, Levy Joe, the millionaire whose empire spanned real estate, tech, and half the city council. There was the parking attendant who'd asked Margret to wait in line like everyone else. He'd been fired that same day, and rumor had it he'd been blacklisted from every decent job in the city. There was the principal who'd called to discuss her grandson's bullying behavior. The school's funding was cut by a major donor, one of Levy Joe's holding companies. The principal resigned. The city had learned a simple equation. Cross Margret Joe, and Levy Joe would make sure you paid and paid and paid. Of course, Mrs. Joe, Marie said quickly, gesturing toward the best table in the house, a corner booth with a view of the city lights, currently occupied by a couple celebrating their anniversary. If you just give me one moment, I'll give you nothing, Margret said coldly. Get them out now. Marie's hands trembled as she approached the couple, whispering apologies they could barely hear over their own shock and indignation, but they moved. Everyone always moved for Margret Joe. From the kitchen doorway, Helen watched. Helen Vance had been working at Le Chateau Elegant for 8 months. At 28, she was putting herself through community college, taking business classes at night, and serving tables by day. She'd grown up in the city's South End, where people paid for groceries in crumpled bills and hope, where respect was earned through character, not bank accounts. She'd heard about Margret Joe. Everyone had, but she'd never served her before. Helen, Pierre, the head waiter, hissed from beside her. You're up. Table 7. Helen's stomach tightened. Why me? Because Sophie called in sick. Marcus is handling the mayor's table, and Pierre's voice dropped to barely a whisper. You're the only one brave enough or foolish enough to handle her. You mean I'm the newest? Helen said. That too. Pierre at least had the grace to look apologetic. Whatever you do, don't argue. Don't question. Don't breathe too loud. Just smile, take her order, and pray she doesn't notice you exist. Helen tied her apron tighter and walked toward table 7. Margret Joe was already on her phone, barking orders at someone about a property inspection that better happen yesterday or heads will roll. She was 73, but carried herself with the rigid authority of someone who'd spent decades terrifying people into submission. Her hair was dyed an aggressive black, pulled back so tightly it seemed to lift her eyebrows into a permanent expression of disdain. Diamonds glittered at her throat, wrists, and ears, each piece worth more than Helen would make in 5 years. Good evening, Helen said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Welcome to Le Chateau Elegant. Can I start you with something to drink?" Margaret's eyes, cold and calculating, flicked up from her phone for exactly half a second. "Champagne, Dom Perignon, the 2008, and it better be properly chilled. Not that lukewarm swill you people usually serve." "Of course. I'll bring that right. I'm not finished." Margaret's voice could have frozen fire. "I want the lobster bisque, but tell your chef not to oversalt it like last time. I want the Dover sole, prepared tableside, no butter, no herbs, just lemon. I want the vegetables steamed for exactly 3 minutes, not 2, not 4, 3, and I want them on a separate plate, not touching anything else. Do you understand? Or do I need to speak slower?" Helen felt her jaw tighten, but kept her smile in place. "I understand perfectly, Mrs. Joe. And make sure my water is filtered room temperature with exactly 1 slice of lemon. Not lime. Lemon, and change these flowers." Margaret gestured dismissively at the elegant orchid centerpiece. "They're wilting. They're disgusting. They shouldn't be anywhere near the table where I'm eating. I'll have them replaced immediately." Immediately means now, not whenever you feel like shuffling over here. Helen removed the flowers, which were actually pristine, and headed toward the kitchen. Behind her, she heard Margaret return her phone call, something about a tenant who was 2 days late on rent and clearly needs to learn a lesson about respect. In the kitchen, Helen delivered the order to Chef Antoine, whose face went through a complicated series of expressions: frustration, resignation, then carefully controlled neutrality. 3 minutes on the vegetables," he muttered. "Does she think I don't know how to cook? Does she think her money makes her a chef?" "Just make it perfect," Helen said quietly. "Please." The champagne arrived first. Helen poured it with the precision of a surgeon, making sure it was exactly the right temperature, exactly the right amount. Margaret didn't even look at her. She simply picked up the glass, took a sip, and set it down. Then came the bisque. Helen placed it gently in front of Margaret, the steam rising in delicate spirals. Margaret took 1 spoonful, then another. Then she slammed the spoon down so hard the silverware jumped. "This is garbage," she shouted, loud enough that every conversation in the restaurant stopped dead. "This is oversalted, under-seasoned garbage, and I wouldn't feed it to a dog." Helen's breath caught. "Mrs. Joe, I'm so sorry. Let me—" "You're sorry? You're sorry." Margaret's voice rose another octave. "Sorry doesn't fix incompetence. Sorry doesn't excuse serving me food that tastes like it came from a gas station. Do you have any idea who I am? Do you have any idea what I could do to this pathetic establishment?" Pierre appeared at Helen's elbow, his face ashen. "Mrs. Joe, please, I'm certain we can." "Get away from me," Margaret snapped. "I'm speaking to this worthless girl." "You." She jabbed a finger at Helen. "What's your name?" "Helen Vance." "Well, Helen Vance, let me educate you about how the world works. People like me, people with money, power, and standards, we keep people like you employed. We're the reason you can afford whatever pathetic little life you're scraping together, and in exchange, we expect excellence. We expect respect. We expect you to do your job without forcing us to eat this slop." Helen felt something shift inside her chest. It wasn't anger exactly, it was something colder, clearer. She'd watched her mother work 3 jobs to keep their family housed. She'd watched her father die from a heart attack brought on by stress and poverty. She'd watched good people break themselves against the indifference of a world that measured worth in dollar signs. And she was done being silent. "Mrs. Joe," Helen said quietly, "the soup isn't oversalted. Chef Antoine is one of the best in the city. He used exactly the amount of salt the recipe requires." The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Margaret's eyes widened with something like shock, as if a piece of furniture had suddenly spoken. "Excuse me." "The soup is perfect," Helen continued, her voice steady. "You're not tasting salt. You're tasting your own bitterness. How dare you? How dare I?" Helen's voice rose now, not in anger, but in something like sorrow. "Mrs. Joe, you've spent the last 20 minutes treating everyone in this restaurant like they're beneath you. The hostess who greeted you with kindness. The couple whose anniversary you ruined. Me, the chef. Every single person here is working hard, trying to make an honest living, trying to create something beautiful for people to enjoy, and you treat us like we're nothing. I'll have you fired, Margret sputtered, her face flushing red. I'll have this entire restaurant shut down. Do you know who my son is? I know exactly who he is, Helen said. Levy Joe, the millionaire, and I know you use his name like a weapon, threatening anyone who doesn't bow down to you, but here's what I don't understand. Mrs. Joe with all that money, with all that power, with a son who's achieved so much. Why are you so cruel? The question hung in the air like smoke. What did you say to me? Margret's voice had gone quiet, dangerous. I asked why you're so cruel, Helen repeated. You have everything. You could walk into this restaurant and make everyone's night better just by being kind. You could leave a generous tip that would help me pay my tuition. You could compliment the chef who spent hours perfecting that soup. You could thank the hostess who gave you the best table in the house. You could acknowledge that the people serving you are human beings who deserve love and respect, just like you do. People like you don't deserve. Everyone deserves love and respect, Helen said firmly. Everyone. The person cleaning your house. The person parking your car. The person serving your soup. We're all trying. We're all struggling. We all have families, dreams, and hearts that break when people treat us like we don't matter. Money doesn't make you better than us, Mrs. Joe. It just makes you richer. Margret stood up, her entire body shaking. You have no idea who you're talking to. My son will destroy you. He'll destroy this restaurant. He'll what? Helen asked softly. Fire me? I've been fired before. Blacklist me? I'll find work somewhere. Shut down this restaurant? Then you'll have to explain to the city why you crushed a business that employs 40 people, all because one waitress told you the truth. The truth. Margret laughed, but it sounded hollow. You don't know anything about the truth. I know that everyone in this city is afraid of you, Helen said. I know that people move out of your way, give you whatever you want, treat you like royalty, not because they respect you, but because they're terrified, and I know that's not the same thing as love. It's not the same as respect. It's just fear. Something flickered in Margret's eyes, something Helen couldn't quite read. You think you're so wise. Margret's voice was barely a whisper now. You think you understand the world? I understand that we're all going to die someday, Helen said gently. And when we do, the only thing that matters is how we treat people. Not our bank accounts, not our power, not the fear we inspired, just the kindness we showed, the love we gave, the respect we offered. The restaurant was completely silent now. Even the kitchen had gone quiet, staff crowding in the doorway to watch. Margret Joe stared at Helen for a long moment. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her hands, adorned with those expensive rings, trembled slightly. You're fired, she finally said, but the venom was gone from her voice. Yes, ma'am, Helen said. I expected that, and I'm leaving. This restaurant is beneath me. Yes, ma'am. Margret grabbed her purse and started toward the door, but halfway there, she stopped. Turned around. That couple, she said quietly. The anniversary couple I displaced. What table are they at now? Table 12, Pierre answered nervously. By the kitchen. Levy walked to table 12. The couple looked up at her with undisguised fear. Your meal tonight, Margret said stiffly, is complimentary, and I apologize for interrupting your celebration. Before anyone could respond, she walked out. The restaurant erupted in whispers. Pierre looked at Helen with an expression somewhere between admiration and terror. You're not actually fired, he said. I won't allow it. I appreciate that, Helen said, but she'll make sure. Let her try, said a voice from the entrance. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway was a man in an expensive suit, early 40s, with his mother's sharp features but something softer in his eyes. Levy Joe. He walked directly to Helen. I heard what happened. My driver was outside and heard my mother shouting. I came back. Helen's heart hammered. Mr. Joe, You told my mother she was cruel, Levy said. Yes. You told her money doesn't make her better than anyone else. Yes. You told her everyone deserves love and respect. Yes, sir, and I stand by every word. Levy looked at her for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the restaurant. He smiled. My mother has been difficult for as long as I can remember, he said quietly. When my father died, she became harder, meaner. She used my success as a shield, a weapon. People have been terrified of her for years, and I let it happen. I made excuses. I told myself she was just protecting me, protecting our family name. He paused, looking toward the door his mother had exited through. But you're right. Fear isn't respect, and I've been enabling her to confuse the two. He turned back to Helen. You're not fired. In fact, I'm going to make sure you get a promotion and a scholarship, full tuition for your business degree. Helen's eyes widened. Mr. Joe, I didn't say those things to. I know you didn't. That's exactly why I'm doing it. Because you spoke up when no one else would. Because you valued your integrity more than your job security. Because you reminded me and my mother that money is meaningless if we use it to make people feel small. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then showed Helen the screen. It was a message to the restaurant's owner. Helen Vance is under my protection. Anyone who fires or mistreats her answers to me directly. Thank you, Helen whispered, tears pricking her eyes. Thank my mother, Margret said. She's the one who needed to hear what you said. Whether she'll change, I don't know. But at least one person finally told her the truth. He started to leave, then turned back. Oh, and Helen, the next time you see my mother here, I want you to serve her. Treat her exactly the same way you treat anyone else. With respect, dignity, and honesty. That's what she needs. That's what we all need. 3 weeks later, Margret Joe walked back into Le Chateau Elegant. The hostess went pale. The manager reached for his phone. The entire staff held their breath. Table 7, Margret said quietly. If it's available. Of course, Mrs. Joe, Marie said carefully. Margret sat down, folded her hands, waited. When Helen approached the table, her heart pounding, Margret looked up at her. There was no warmth in her eyes, exactly, but the cruelty was gone. In its place was something else. Something almost like respect. Good evening, Mrs. Joe, Helen said. Can I start you with something to drink? The champagne, Margret said. Then, after a pause, please. Helen blinked. Of course. I'll bring that right away. And Helen, yes. The soup last time, it was excellent. I was wrong. I'd like to order it again. Helen felt her throat tighten. I'll make sure Chef Antoine knows you enjoyed it. As Helen walked away, she heard Margret speak again, quietly, almost to herself. Everyone deserves love and respect. Everyone. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't redemption. But it was a start. And in a city where money had always bought silence, one waitress's words had finally bought something more valuable. The possibility of change. The possibility that even the hardest hearts could learn to be soft. The possibility that kindness, not fear, could be the strongest currency of all. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted, and that even broken path can lead to beautiful places and change of lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Arena, because your support keeps stories like this alive and spreading. Tell us in the comment what you would have done differently. As the waitress, would you have confronted her? Would Levy have offered her the scholarship? Or has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life in ways you didn't expect? We'd love to hear your story.